It is time to engage. All right, welcome to this week's episode of Trek It or Wreck It. We are talking 208 Identity Part 1 of Orville Star Galactica and 206 The Sound of Thunder of Star Trek Discovery. So, we're going to get into some spoilers, so I leave it up to you to decide whether you want to keep watching. Vanya? Sonia? It is time to get into this. Okay, these are two episodes that have some interesting parallels about a major character from the bridge crew that is high-ranking, going to their homeworld and really seeing what their people are all about and what their vicious histories are. And these are going to be fascinating episodes to compare.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get into first, let's talk Orville Star Galactica, because, yeah, it was The Matrix, it was Battlestar, it was so... It was right in our faces the moment you step in and see the red versions of Blue Isaac. And how could these not be horrible creatures? Did you see it coming? Did you see the villainy coming?
Yes.
Yeah?
I was like, why are they being so casual about staying there? You know, when they're so clearly very powerful and they don't seem to be honest. They don't seem to be being very clear, honest at all.
Yeah.
You know? So I kind of predicted that. I realized I watch a lot of TV though, so I still think it was good, surprising.
The set design was a little bit all that whiteness, kind of Borgian,
little Borgy, like, but also a little Cylon with the like data streams to put their hands into.
Clockwork Orange too, like a couple of those sets from Clockwork Orange. Yeah, it was ominous.
Yeah,
it was ominous for sure.
And the fact that these robots have an M-class planet was like big flag.
Yeah, huge. even like some of the stairs and how things are built. That's very humanoid, right? Like a welcoming center. You know, I was like, stairs. Like the way the stairs are, it just seems so human. You know what I mean? And I think they wanted to show us that so that we knew that that's where it was coming from, right?
Yeah, and the question of whether we were watching something that was humans designing something not so well for a TV show they're making, or robots living in human legacy, essentially.
Yes.
And how much of that is based on how they were built, and how much of that is based on this is their home, is an interesting question. But let's talk now about going back to the scene of the crime of Brightest Star, because again, I'm feeling like with Discovery, they're telling us everything we needed to know about Kaminar in the episode. So did Brightest Star need to exist? What do you think? Did that short need to exist?
It didn't. I don't think so.
Was it created for that reason? I mean,
if it was, then that's a fascinating question, because we're not leaning into the other three shorts at all yet.
Yeah.
But Kaminar has come up over and over and over again.
I just don't think it needed to be in that way. I feel like when I'm watching an episode of Discovery, a game I play with myself now is I say it out loud. Often I'm like, don't tell me what I already know. You know, don't do it. Like
that's what Previously On is all about.
Yeah, and also, you know, when you were saying that they don't use their logs well.
Yeah.
And so he basically did a log at the beginning of this, but it could have been a log of Brightest Star. It could have told us the things that we needed to do in that log. You don't have to have a whole episode about it. You could just do that and have logs. Logs are really useful. It's a great tool. It's one of the best Star Trek tools for telling the story without giving exposition.
It's an excuse for voiceover, which is not a natural thing in most television mediums. It's very popular in a book, not so popular on TV. But the captain's log, the commander's log, the first officer's log, these things are really handy tools. And again, this one wasn't introduced as that.
Yeah, but instead it's almost like a poem, rather than instead of telling us later again over and over the things that we're seeing, you could just use the log to tell us those things, to give us that exposition. Then we believe it. It doesn't seem like this wasteful exposition. And then we can just get into the story,
Absolutely.
Right? But instead they're using it to tell, do this kind of poetry that they're not putting in dialogue, oddly, and then not using the tool that has been given to them from years and years of Star Trek, which I feel like they could benefit from.
Yeah. All right, now let's switch back to Orville. What did you think about Isaac's turn? because we got a gradual turn from Saru in this one, where we've slowly seen him changing over a few episodes. This one was like, turn him off, turn him on, and now he's cold. Colder than Isaac usually is.
Really, it seemed like that was normal for Isaac, because Isaac was unfortunately not like Data. I mean, it's not right to compare anybody to Data. Data was a very special creation, but Isaac always seemed to not understand that he or to not be interested in even talking to human beings like human beings talk. You know, Data understood that
Data
he was missing. He tried. He was missing something, and he was trying.
It was a wish of his.
Yes, that's right. But Isaac was always, to me, just a robot. That's why I didn't enjoy the episode when he and I believe it's Dr. Claire. When he and Claire got together. It made much more sense when Data attempted those, even though they were ill-fated as well.
Well, on the topic of relationships Data's had, Yar, we have a reason to talk about her again this time around, because there's another tar monster in this episode of Discovery.
Yes.
What did you guys think of getting to see, not the Gua'uld, which would be confusing for sci-fi fans, but the Bua'uld?
Baul.
Yeah, the Baul, not the Gua'uld, which is like, a different name would have been great, but SG-1 fans are like a little confused by it. What did you think of getting to see this tar creature thing with red eyes? Do you think that's the actual alien, or do you think that's some kind of like avatar?
I don't even know. I feel like there's such a mystery. Like I feel like we haven't even peeled back like what they truly are. I mean, they're able to make all this technology.
But they only got warped 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is curious. I mean, the Romulans didn't have warp at this time either. So it was like a weird time for being, like, having these gigantic space war machines, but no warp drive. And to have 10 of these gargantuan megaliths, which actually had a similar design to what the Borg ships were designed as before they were cubes. Before they were cubes, the designs were these cool green and black megaliths, and then they went with a cube instead. So it was neat to see this design. I don't know if the folks at Discovery are pulling more like historical things in the way that the shape of the Discovery itself is from an old Star Trek design, but that felt very Borg as those things came forward.
I felt like in both shows they had these, what we're so used to with Star Trek, certain kinds of ships, certain shapes. And the Orville is kind of based on those shapes too. And then you're seeing like this ball like circle thing, which also is like the Borg, and then you have these like
I found
both shows did that where they were like being attacked by these
strange geometric
shapes.
things.
Yeah, and I thought that was pretty neat, the parallel.
Now, what did you think about the fact that it seems Kaelon has made no ships for creatures to stand on? They've only made these like things that come up out of the planet and fly off. The only ship that we saw actual members stepping onto was the Orville. It felt a bit like Basics Part 1 at the end of that in Voyager, when all of a sudden you have one member of the crew who has turned on the crew, revealed themselves to be different than you expected, and brought in some bad friends to take over the ship. The only difference is in Basics, they kicked everybody off the ship. And on this, we got to see essentially a hostage situation.
Yeah. I actually think in Basics, it makes more sense to me that you would get rid of the people on the ship. Like, it would make your job way more difficult if they're all there.
Well, when you have a superiority complex, you might not even consider them a problem.
That's
not
true.
A threat.
They're not humanoids. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. And so, but I was just like, why keep them? Why are they even there still?
They were a lot more interesting than Isaac was in this episode for me, because I found it fascinating, the whole idea of the superior beings thinking that they need to destroy the inferior ones. And I found and the only thing I found really interesting, actually, Isaac was mean to the kids. He was, I mean, there was no intention. That's a thing. That's why I don't find him that interesting, because there's no, it's funny when he interacts with humans because he's so different. But the fact that he has no intention and no understanding makes him a lot less interesting to me. But the one thing that happened at the end, I don't know if it's just because I'm hoping it will happen, or if it was the way it was directed, but when he the way that he moved to sit down, and the moment that he did it, I thought, I wonder if in part 2 Isaac's gonna turn on the Kaylons. I wonder what's gonna happen.
Oh, we can only hope.
I know.
When he was holding that drawing and dropped it on the floor, that was the first thing that felt. That was the first time it felt malicious and not irrelevant to him. Like, it seemed mean that he dropped that on the floor, where someone is definitely going to find it.
I think that if we're hoping for what it is that if he's been affected in the way we hope he's been affected, maybe he was trying to be malicious, kind of like hurt somebody to make them go away. Like, he wanted Ty to find it so that he could be like, okay, now I hate you too, and then I'm going to let go of you.
Because we did establish that Isaac couldn't delete Claire from his memory banks without damaging his core system. So his version of love is a mechanical dependence on something as opposed to a chemical dependence.
Yeah, he's not like Data where he keeps... He has actually said time and time again, he's not like growing. He's collecting, right? Where Data is actually... The difference is that he's like progressing every time he like has an attachment to like Geordi or whatever. It's like it's getting deeper and deeper, where with Isaac he's just kind of like picking up stuff, but he's not really it's not really evolving him,
and it's also because Isaac doesn't look like a humanoid, right? So maybe that's what it is too, because Data was obviously unable to return emotion, but it wasn't as harsh.
But like in the moment that Q let him laugh, you could see the face of a human laughing, and then it stopped. And then you had that moment where you could see the expression, which they tried to do on the Orville by giving him a holographic face when he's on the holodeck with Claire. But it only ever happens on the holodeck, and it's mostly just rather blank, and it's kind of just for boning.
Yeah, it's right. It's like it's just a simulation of so that she can interact with that simulation, and she's not just kissing like something flat.
Cobra Commander.
But and I just feel like he's not like Data in the sense that, like, Data is Pinocchio, right? Data wants to be a real boy, where Isaac really doesn't have desire.
Yeah.
That's right.
This was such a heartbreaking episode. And I've got to say, for an episode where on the Orville it was all about breaking your heart, Discovery was all about giving agency to a coward. And it was fascinating that the threat ganglia that just was so, if you touched it with a knife, it would kill him, but has been replaced with this weapon that comes out. What did you guys think of that, of those dart teeth things that come out of him?
Yeah, I thought it was, I don't know, I thought it was pretty imaginative. And it, you know what? The whole experience, Sarah reminded me of is Odo, because Odo is this kind, person who all of a sudden is in a place where he finds out his makeup can be very dangerous and very powerful. You know what I mean? He goes home and then he finds out, oh my God, we're the thing that is causing all this destruction.
Those are some really cool Odo connections.
So I couldn't stop thinking about the idea that now he had all this power and he was able to use all this aggression. Like, the thing about Odo is he's not his full potential of a changeling. He's not. He doesn't know how to do all the things that they know how to do. They know how to completely change themselves. He can't fully change himself. And so Saru is like the embodiment. He's like almost the same, where he's like, he doesn't even know he doesn't even know his strength until that's all gone.
Well, and we know a bit about his strength from what happened last season, where he kicked the crap out of Burnham. What did you guys think was going to happen when he started to like aggressively muscle Pike down? What did you guys think was going to happen? They were like, the security guard like got up just in case he was going to be able to stop.
Because when you're seeing even Tyler being like, what is happening? Because he's like a Klingon, basically. Like, I was just like, I thought, well, I hope somebody saw it, and she did. Like, it does make sense, but I was like, wow, he's really getting up in this space.
And Saru's evolution was really fascinating in this. It was very poignant, and I loved when he was talking to Paul. I liked the parallel there between each of them is it is the same but different in a significant ways, each in their own way. So Paul is distressed because his nervous system.
Yeah.
Culbert.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Paul's partner.
Yeah, Paul's partner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I got the name wrong. I'm sorry.
Hugh.
I'm sorry.
No, Hugh. I just
Hugh
want
and Paul.
because I was
Hugh.
Okay.
Yeah, Hugh. So Hugh is changing.
Undergone this huge change, but nobody else can really perceive it.
Yeah, well, because his thoughts and it sounds like his thoughts and his feelings are the same, but his physical body has been totally regenerated.
Yeah. Like they clearly need counselors.
Yeah. Where's
Counselor Troy, where are you? Like,
they need counselors on their ship.
How did it take them 100 years to realize, maybe this is going to be a little hard on people?
Yeah, well, they both lost something, and one of them has like his identity taken away, and one of them is somewhat enhancing his identity. Like Saru's like he's growing, into something where Hugh, that scar that he kept is part of his identity
and who he was,
he is, and having that his choice, like a choice to keep a scar where people apparently don't have scars anymore, and like he chose that, and now it's been stripped away. Where Saru is getting away from the fact that he wasn't able to choose things, and now he can make choices and have a real impact. And it's kind of sad.
Yeah. But one thing I noticed in this episode was that we've now officially had more Anson Mount as Pike than any other actor has been Pike. More time on screen than anybody else.
Yeah, that's so true.
So what do we think? Is he the best Pike?
Yes.
Yes.
He's like Pike now to me.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That moment when he's like, no, he's our people. I was like,
but even when he...
Choose wisely?
Yes.
I just think he's getting all the great lines.
Even when Saru came up to him in his space, I was like, whoa, he's like, he didn't back down at all. He was just like, he's the best Pike.
Damn it.
How did that happen?
Anson Mount, you've stolen our hearts.
You weren't expecting it.
I was not. I've never liked that actor in anything. I need to go back and watch everything he's done now, because now I love Pike. I might like Hell on Wheels. Who knows?
Right.
Who knows? I love westerns, so it could be a match made in heaven. I thought it was fascinating that this episode of Discovery was almost named after a Ray Bradbury story. Sound of Thunder is a Ray Bradbury story from which we have the idea of the butterfly effect. Yeah, Sound of Thunder is a story where big game hunters go back in time to hunt like dinosaurs, and they kill a butterfly. And that's where the butterfly effect comes from. This idea that you go back in time, change a thing, it ripples. And we're talking about time incursions now on Discovery. What do you guys think? Where do you think we're going with this? Is this going to be a character we know who's gone to the future and come back? Is this Spock? Is this...
The Angel?
Is this... Yeah, exactly. This Iron Man suit that we are now realizing the Angel is, who's in the suit? Could it have anything to do with the ending of Enterprise we never got? The Temporal Cold War. Like, there are things in Star Trek canon that could slip into this if they're allowed to do it.
Yeah, if they're courageous in their writing, they could really nail something that will bring in people that haven't watched Star Trek and reward Star Trek fans.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah. What do you guys think? Are we optimistic? Do we think that could happen?
Yes, I hope it does. I'm
optimistic.
I hope it does. What struck me was that when the Red Angel was first introduced, I thought, this is the first Star Trek in a while that has a spiritual element to it. The last one was really DS9, where the spiritual element was such a big part of the whole show. Obviously, it was based on that.
And even in that, the spiritual element of it was science so advanced it seemed like magic.
Yeah. But it looks like the Red Angel. It looks like it's not that. So I find that interesting. I really can't wait to see who the Red Angel is and have it explained. I hope it's cool. This cool connection you guys just thought of.
Well, no, but you're right. I feel like if they continue to go on the same path, Discovery, they kind of set up their thesis about that quote from
Aeschylus
about magic, about science seeming like magic if you don't understand it. What's the... I don't know.
If it's advanced enough, it's indistinguishable from God.
Yeah, and so they kind of set that up early. And so if they stay on track with how, I'm optimistic that they will, then they have this whole thesis for this whole entire season, and that can be really great, if they stay focused. And I really thought this episode 2 was quite one of their more economical episodes, where we weren't being bombarded with like 5 stories.
Yes.
Yep.
And it had like kind of like a B story, kind of like Hugh, you know, kind of thing, and then the main story, which attached itself to the overarching, you know, thing.
Yes.
And even
so,
Tilly and Arium had something to do, and that
but
like siphoned right into the main story.
Yeah.
Now, on the topic of everything fitting into the story, with Brightest Star sort of getting into a lane that matters for this show now, and Calypso being a short trek that happened 1,000 years in the future, could there be a connection between Kraft from the short trek being who comes back from the future? Because that would be fascinating as well. The Discovery herself exists 1,000 years in the future. Or was it just another like throwaway short trek? There's a lot to think about when it comes to this time incursion thing. Is this Section 31 from the future coming back? Because we know that the Federation in the future from Voyager has the ability to casually go back in time and fix things. So there are a lot of potential time incursions this could be coming from, or it could just be tachyons. Because every time people say there's tachyons, it tends to be time travel, but it could also just be tachyons.
True.
Like, very disappointing.
Right?
Don't make it just tachyons.
Especially after all this. And I love the idea that Pike is so optimistic that, the Red Angel, they're everywhere we go, something great happens.
Yeah.
And then Tyler's like, this thing could completely wipe us out.
I actually love that one scene because it was 3 different takes on the. I like that Burnham was the middle part and she was coming from logic, so she could see Tyler's side and she could see Pike's side, and she could kind of say, "Okay, I'm going to give you some guidance as one of your officers to say we should be cautiously optimistic."
Yes.
That I thought the 3 kind of pillars of that was really neat.
And she said, because we need more information. And that brings me to something that's really interesting about both of these shows. In Discovery, it relates to the Predator and Prey and Section 31. Because on Kaminar, on Kaminar, the Kelpians don't know what they look like. They don't understand anything. So they're kept ignorant, and they're also lied to. So the people in power lie to them to be able to control them. And I don't know. I thought, Section 31 kind of does that. It gathers intelligence.
People don't know who they are.
They don't know who they are. They try to, in order to control and have power. And then it's very different on the Orville, but. Well, maybe it's not that different actually, because Isaac and the Kalons, they collected this information, and they were of course not planning on joining the Union
at any time.
No, they were trying to figure out if we are worthy.
What a threat we are.
If we're worthy of.
Which goes back to Battlestar Galactica
resources.
in that idea of, are we worth saving?
Yes.
And so I wonder if Isaac will make the choice that humans and the Union are worth saving, because who else is in a position to make that difference? I mean, nobody. We established early in Identity Part 1 that nobody has any idea what's happening under the hood of Isaac, which means nobody knows what's happening under the hood of any of the Kalons.
It's interesting because I feel like what Sonia's talking about and what you're saying is like both shows are dealing with faith, right?
And hope. Faith.
Right?
So,
yeah,
faith,
so
faith.
the idea that, okay, the way Pike's acting, he has he's gained some sort of faith in what's happening. The way the Kelpians, they it's all based in their faith, where on the Orville their faith is lying with somebody who they consider their friend potentially. You know what I mean? That they've built up a faith in a person that is now betraying them, right? So the themes are all very much intertwined.
Yeah.
And I like the way they set up Saru. Saru's very hopeful that the Kelpians will not go back to the old ways. And I think,
I was like,
you know that.
I was like,
but I like that. I like that we don't know that they're not going to go back to the old ways, and I hope that actually we revisit that. I wouldn't mind going back to that at some point, but who knows?
Well, and I wonder how much technology the Bois will have.
Yes.
Because the idea of an incredibly physically powerful group and a technologically advanced group, the last time they needed to do this, they were successful at wiping out the advanced Kelpians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if they were able to do it that time, whatever they used then, they've got to have better technology than that now.
Right. Yeah.
And, I mean, maybe the Angel came back and wiped out their capacity to do that.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean you can't blast them from orbit. Like, there's all kinds of they have plenty of war machines. That's what they make.
I wasn't completely convinced.
Yeah.
I was happy that Saru felt that, that he had faith in the fact that I was like, the Kelpians, because he kept talking about how they were coming from a place of rage. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well...
That's not a great negotiation.
Yeah, because he kept... kind of saying that. He's like, we're have all this rage, and I'm like, well, then he would say, but don't worry about us. And I'm like, I think I'm pretty worried about you.
It's almost like, there's going to be, let's say there's a civil war. It's interesting that their first contact with Kaminar, right? Because it's first contact.
Yeah.
Well, no, technically it's not first contact.
Well, it's first contact with one of the species on Kaminar, but it's been 20 years since first contact with the other species on Kaminar.
One person, so technically all the beings on Kaminar.
It sounds like there was actually a time when Starfleet spoke with the Waul and said, okay, we're going to steer clear of what's going on here.
Because of what Burnham says, too. She's like, they're isolationists, right? She knew about them in that way. So there's obviously some data on that.
Okay.
Like an interaction before Giorgio was there.
But yeah, this is the first contact with the Kelpians on that planet, which is fascinating because this idea of first contact, not first contact, learning about these people that you kind of know a bit about. General Order 1. It was the same thing happening with this discovery of that the Orville had of going to Kalon, because they had already contacted these people, but were learning so much more. They'd never really been there. It was fascinating to watch these like pseudo first contacts happen, because we're so used to a standard, hey, first time I've met you, how are you, kind of first contact.
And we have like this understanding of the prime directive, and Star Trek kind of made that up, and the other science fiction has used that in their own way. And so now we have this understanding about what we're supposed to do when we meet another culture, which I think is funny that it comes directly from one show. So when we're watching Orville, we're kind of like, oh yeah, when they're talking about screwing things up, we're like, yeah, you guys are not good at this.
No.
But it's, when you look at TNG, for instance, it's like they've come such a long way with that. They've worked out how to even like go onto a planet and not be seen, and and have some sort of influence there without having influence. So we have like a standard. And then these guys are more cowboyish because they don't really know. He's like, let's stretch the order but not break it. And I was like, you're pretty kind of breaking it
really
there.
Breaking it. But I mean, they do leave it up to the captains to make that decision. And I guess eventually if you make that decision badly enough, you're not a captain anymore. Or at least you're not going on the deep space missions. One thing I thought was fascinating was the parallels between Best of Both Worlds Part 1 and Identity Part 1. Because Best of Both Worlds Part 1 was kind of the first time that we really got hit with a two-part storyline with a weight in between. And in fact, when they wrote Best of Both Worlds Part 1, they were going on hiatus and they did not even know how they were going to finish that story. They had to figure that out when they came back.
Which is so
cool. I'm amazed it worked out as well as it did, because that's a terrible way to do that. But with Identity, we're, going to find out pretty soon what's going to happen, because it's Identity Part 1 and Identity Part 2, and then the episode after that is not called Identity Part 3. So it sounds like this is going to wrap up inside of 2 episodes, which is interesting because we've seen themes through the Orville that have lasted for like an arc across a season or across multiple seasons so far. And it'll be interesting to see if they give us a similar ending to Best of Both Worlds Part 2. Because it was the person who has turned to be a part of the large mechanized machine who we used to consider an important bridge officer, who we got back, and then they were instrumental in the destruction of the evil machine. And so that's the ending I immediately jumped to for Identity Part 2. But I wonder if they can surprise us. Because I've got to say, Discovery surprised me. I thought we were going to find out that Kelpians, when they evolve past their Vahari, just become Waul. That's where I thought we were going to go.
I thought they were the same species.
You don't even know what you are.
That was going to happen.
Because you're us. So I was really impressed that they added a third ingredient to it, because I didn't see that coming. And I love when Discovery surprises me without being dumb. Because I get surprised at how dumb a choice is sometimes, but I'm rarely surprised at how brilliant a choice is. But I thought this one really delivered something brilliant.
Yeah, I think it really nailed it. I've said this to you before. I feel like Discovery does have a harder job because they have Star Trek attached to their name.
Yes.
And so with the Orville, like, they can be more derivative, right, of previous Star Trek, especially since they're going to have a lot of people that come to it that have never seen Star Trek. And they can kind of, like, make Star Trek Next Generation again.
Yeah.
But I really do think that in this episode, even though it had, like, some things, like, having to do with the Borg and that sort of thing, they are doing their own thing. And hopefully, I agree with you. It would be best if they tried to, like, surprise us a little bit more away from, you know, how Best of Both Worlds ended. Maybe it'll be a longer arc.
Maybe Isaac comes back to us much further down the line?
Yeah, or he comes back right away, but there are consequences, you know, to his coming back.
And I wonder if he has guns in his head.
Oh, yeah. That's what I was thinking. I'm like, does he have those guns too?
Right? Because if it does...
That was pretty imaginative.
Yeah, that was great. Why do you aim from here when you could just aim from where your head is?
Right?
It makes way more sense.
I felt also that, may I say that, I felt like the security officers on the Orville don't know how to hide.
Yes!
They don't know how to...
They don't know what cover is.
They don't know how to take cover, and no one knows how to hide on that ship.
No.
I feel like on Next Gen, everybody knew how to hide real well.
Yeah.
Like, even Ty and Marcus, they went behind a ship, but they didn't go behind it. They just stood right. They went to a position directly in front of the door.
Yeah.
And I was just, and Kalinin and Tova, they were just like, let's stand by the brightest place in the room.
Yeah, and just
you know, I was like, can somebody hide or take cover one time?
Nope.
Please?
Nope, no hiding.
But in my criticism, I also want to say that I thought that the comedy in Orville was like really well balanced this episode too.
Yes, the comedy came in a few times, mostly around Bortus and Cake, and very enjoyable.
Yeah, and that song.
Oh,
yes.
It's something that
I had no idea.
Oh, and then I fell down a rabbit hole because I've loved Scott Grimes. I have to admit, since he was Sam's boyfriend on Who's the Boss, Chad McCann, back in the day. Look it up. But also, so I've always loved that he was on, you know, Band of Brothers and that sort of thing. Yeah. But I didn't know that he could sing.
He killed it.
And he's a really good singer because I fell down a rabbit hole and I looked and hey, there's a 1984 version of him singing as an 11-year-old boy singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Oh, check it out.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That was a song. But it was so funny.
Lovely.
But it was funny.
Yeah.
The closing of the eyes, the touching of the face. Yeah. It was really, really fun. Air Supply? Crazy.
So good. Now, as impressed as I am with this episode of Discovery, I also think it's interesting that the writers, Kim and Lippold, are the showrunners of the announced Captain Georgiou spin-off show. So, if so, I think we're in good hands. If, you know, Star Trek has announced things that went off the rails and never happened in the past. Right. And hopefully, if these are the two people in charge of it, this show happens. Because I was not jazzed for a Captain Georgiou Section 31 spin-off series. But now I am. Because these people, they knew what they were doing. I felt like the only thing I was really jazzed about is seeing more Michelle Yeoh, because I'm always on board for more Michelle Yeoh. In the right hands, obviously, is best. But, this does give me a lot of hope about what that's going to... Even Tyler in this episode, I felt better about Tyler in this episode.
Yeah. Why was he in the Star Trek uniform, though?
He's wearing his Starfleet uniform now because he didn't want to look like an evil dentist.
I feel like he still should be in black, but... I
agree.
He's wearing his, the black...
He's still got that...
You know what's really strange about this? Okay.
That nobody knows what Section 31 is in 50 years?
But they do, because remember you said they were on the ship in season 1? They're all in black in Section 31.
I mean, maybe the Federation decides later that this should be a more underground thing, but I'm...
Like, the mixture
I don't have
of
to
the
make
two...
this up myself.
The mixture of the two. And also, from the previous episode, Philippa always showing her in her hand, and I was like, just put that on and just cover it and then show it. You know, this
like
always
like
in the hand.
CIA,
but then in the same episode that she does this, Tyler's in the mess hall wearing it.
That's right.
And he uses it.
The super communicator, and you're like, oh, I guess we'll have those in 100 years.
So it was kind of like, just fix that.
There's some continuity stuff that I'm not totally jazzed about. Although there's also some stuff that is going back to the Kelvin JJ verse, like the little blue or red button on the phaser where it lights up blue or lights up red. Yeah. That's a design aesthetic directly out of the JJ verse.
Yeah.
And so it's just lending more credence to this theory that this is being done entirely on JJ's license and not at all on the canonical license of Star Trek. But on that topic, let's start discussing whether this trekked it or wrecked it. I think this will be an easy one, guys. I'm thinking this is going to be an easy one.
Yeah. Should I just mess with you?
Did the Orville trek it for you or wreck it for you?
I trekked it.
It trekked it?
Yeah.
All right, what about you? Identity number 1, trekked it?
Trekked it.
All right, I got to agree. Identity felt so much like Star Trek, and yet also had some Battlestar Galactica like sprinkled on it, and some Matrix happening. I felt like that was definitely Star Trek at its best.
The existential threat.
Yeah.
You know, when the two species come together, and that was really good. And
all right. Yeah. So Discovery, Sounds of Thunder. Do we think that trekked it?
Yeah, I trekked it.
All right.
Yeah, it's one of the best episodes.
Yes.
Yeah. Definitely. All right. I got to agree, guys. Across the board,
is this
treks
the first
it.
time?
This is great. We've actually this season we've had one across the board. Everyone agrees it treks it in the past. I think it was New Eden that we had that. But then we also had an across the board wrecks it.
Yes.
Everybody thought that it wrecked it when we had that Claire episode with Isaac.
Yeah.
It was just, it did not work.
And then a million things on Discovery that just made it nothing. You know when it had so many things that it became nothing?
That it's just so loud it's deafening.
So what did you like? Why did it trek it for you?
The thing for me about this was that it had everything about being a pocket of morality and discussing a very important concept. And the predator-prey relationship I thought was fascinating. And having Pike need to make a really difficult call. And whether it was the right call or the wrong call, it was beautiful to watch him make it and suffer through making it. I just thought it was exactly what Star Trek should be.
And I felt like the character stepped up to the plate and made decisions and had conversations that made sense.
And at the right time.
Yeah.
Like they weren't having long conversations while Discovery was being torn to little pieces by the messy neural network.
So it was written.
It
was written better.
It was tighter.
It was written way better. Guys, this was a really good week of Star Trek.
It was.
Now,
we got like double Star Trek.
Yeah, we did. We got 2 episodes of Star Trek this week, and that's wild. And this was also when Kurtzman took over officially as showrunner, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So that's weird. I was expecting that to sort of screw the pooch, but it worked. And maybe it's because of our writers, maybe it's because of our showrunners, maybe it's a combination. But guys, we got Trek this week.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, what a good feeling. Such a good feeling. And not a common feeling. So that makes it even better.
Well, they made it easy for us.
Yes.
It was beautiful to look at. It was compelling. You couldn't take your eyes off it when it was beautiful, when it was ugly.
And when it was horror.
Yes.
Like that Shellyak looking creature was deeply terrifying.
Yes.
You know what? Both episodes I said, oh, it's scary. Like in both
the glowing red eyes on both episodes.
Yeah, and also when Ty goes into the tunnel, I was like, oh, I'm scared. And when he played, that little kid played that well when he came out, and she's like, what's wrong? And he's like, there's something wrong, bad in there. I was just like, yeah, I'm buying this. I'm really buying this. Yeah, it was really cool.
It was great. And it gave me that sort of moment that happens in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, spoiler alert, when you're under Ego's planet and you see the bodies. And you're like, oh, shit. I mean, derivative image in that way. Yeah. But that's not like Ego's planet was the first time we saw that either. Right. But it was familiar horror. And you know this ain't good.
Yes. Yeah. And I feel like that's okay. You know, and it mixed with also some original stuff and some imaginative things. That, you know, it's okay to have a throwback to something else when you have other things going for you. You know,
yeah, absolutely. Really cool. And I hope we get this kind of density, but Trek out of Discovery in the future. And I am very excited for what Identity Part 2 is going to give us. And we'll be talking about that one next week. So we'll see you guys then.